The Magic the Gathering market is constantly in flux, and much like stocks, it can be hard to keep up with an ever-changing entity, but never fear, because that's why the Jank Center is here, to showcase 10 cards that are currently dropping in price. You don't gotta buy them, but after watching this video, your brain will be slightly bigger when considering what to buy with your hard-earned money. As always, this video is brought to you by the EDH Jank Center, your source for everything Commander and everything Jank, and I'm your host, Jordan. Now let's get into it. All right, first card we're looking at today is Doubling Season. 4 and a green enchantment. This one is from Double Masters. It says, if an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. It also says, if an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. Listen, bro, it's still expensive, but relatively? This is the cheapest it's ever been, and that's all thanks to some cheeky reprints. This thing is just an absolute house and is an essential piece if you're building anything high-powered that wants to make tokens or put counters on stuff. All this does is churn out value and get you closer to a win, so snag it now before some busted token commander gets printed and this goes up in price. All right, now we're gonna take a look at Vendilion Click. 1 blue legendary creature, fairy wizard from Morningtide. It has flash, which means you can play it at any time you can play an instant, and it has flying, and it says, when Vendilion Click comes into play, look at target player's hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player reveals the chosen card, puts it on the bottom of his or her library, then draws a card, and it's a 3/1. I'm assuming this card used to be at such a high price because of limited formats and how soul-crushing it would be to have your super important game pieces thrown to the bottom of your deck right as you were about to clutch the win. Ugh. Disgusting. Anyways, thanks to reprints and the proliferation of the Commander format, this thing has definitely cooled off. I can see this being good in Commander as well. Instant speed, look at opponent's hand is great for politicking, and a 3/1 flyer is nothing to laugh at either. It can be your Commander. There's also obvious synergies with fairy decks, and the Lorwyn-esque art style is just goated. Gotta love it. And woo doggy, wouldn't you know it, we are now at our patron selection. This week's patron selection comes from our patron Reverend 8. Thank you, Rev, one of the OGs. We appreciate you so much. And Reverend 8 has chosen Bloodghast, which is a 2 black creature vampire spirit. This copy is from Aetherdrift, which is why it's so cheap now. This creature can't block. This creature has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it's a 2/1. This copy from Aetherdrift has just allowed anyone who wants to do Bloodghast shenanigans to be able to do it at a low cost. We love to see it under $1, baby. Woo! Anyways, reprints like this are just so welcome and so clutch, and makes budget deck building an even more viable option because it gives us access to cool and powerful stuff that can also fit into $30, $40, and $50 budgets. The friggin' old Bloodghast, if it's a $30 deck, would take up basically a third of the deck price. Brother, we love this reprint. Next up is Liliana Dreadhorde General. 4 and a black legendary planeswalker. Liliana, this copy is from War of the Spark. It says, whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. And it has 3 loyalty abilities. The first one is +1, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. The second one is -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And the last one is -9, each opponent chooses a permanent type they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest, and its loyalty is 6. Back in my day, 2019, this card was a chase card for many folks, me. But I didn't have the funds yet. Now I still don't have the funds for the 2019 price of this card, but I could justify buying it now, as it's in the single digits, baby. Drawing a card every time a creature of yours, token or non-token might I add, is just so delicious. The value here is obvious, and Liliana is what the kiddos today would call a mommy or mother. So I believe now is the best time to snag this card. Okay, now we're going back-to-back Planeswalkers with Shandra, Torch of Defiance. 2 red, Planeswalker Shandra. This one's from Kaladesh. It has 4 loyalty abilities, the first one being +1. Exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card. If you don't, Shandra, Torch of Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent. The next one is +1, add 2 red mana to your mana pool. The next one is -3, Shandra, Torch of Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. And the last one is -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player, and it's a 4 loyalty to start out. Like our previous gal, this Fire Lady does so much for us. Recent reprints make this an excellent choice for budget decks that want to get a little feisty for 4 mana. If you have ways to protect this, you are golden, because being able to get mana or impulse draw or damage over multiple turns with no mana investment is a game changer. I personally enjoy the mana ability because it essentially discounts her by 2, giving you back 2 mana that you spent to cast it so that you can cast other spells. A very spicy pick here, and so glad it's declining in price so that us paupers of the MTG world may enjoy the spoils of incremental value. And now let's take a look at Worm Coil Engine. 6 colorless mana, artifact creature Worm from Scars of Mirrodin. It has Death Touch and Lifelink, and it says, when Worm Coil Engine is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 3/3 colorless Worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless Worm artifact creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield, and it's a 6/6. This card used to give me nightmares back when I first started playing, and my friend Blaze unleashed it upon the tables several times. Sacking it, recurring it. You are, I'm sure, familiar if you've been around this game long enough. This decline in price could be my chance to get back at Blaze for beating us up with this card. Revenge plans aside, this thing is so good in artifact decks that want to loop things in and out of the yard. But honestly, this thing is just good in general. I feel like it does work no matter where you slot it into. An absolute classic selection here, and so glad it is declining. And number 7 on the list is Arid Mesa, which is a land from Zendikar, and it says tap, pay 1 life, sacrifice Arid Mesa, search your library for a mountain or plains card, and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is uncharted waters here on the Jank Center, because this is the first time I have, I think, ever mentioned a fetch land on the channel, but it is not a disgrace because, hey, this thing is cheaper. Generally, it's on a downward trend. It just recently spiked in price, actually, but it is still lower than its highest point, which I think is a good thing. I love when powerful cards end up taking a dive because it means that it's getting closer to the common folk, and the budget players out there will be able to play with power without it ruining their financial prospects. Absolutely here for it, and I hope it continues to go down for all of our sakes. And now we're going to take a look at Dropkick Bomber, 2 in a red, creature goblin warrior. This one is from Foundations. It says other goblins you control get +1/+1. It also has an activated ability. It says pay 1 red until end of turn. Another target goblin you control gains flying, and when this creature deals combat damage, sacrifice it, and it's a 2/3 big butt gang. So I took a little hiatus from content creating and thusly missed talking about Foundations, but man, I loved the set and love all the cards, this little guy included. 3 mana snags us a dope Anthem effect that on the surface doesn't look like much, but doing the math of damage inflicted by 20 2/2s instead of 20 1/1s, you can see how huge of a difference that makes. Then the last ability makes it so that we can take a goblin that's ideally super swole and give it evasion so that it can hit without having to deal with any blockers on the ground. I love the way this supports both go wide goblins as well as a Voltron or like go tall goblin deck, hoping this goes even further down in price so I can slot this into my Krenko Tinstry Kingpin Voltron deck. Okay, now let's look at number 8, which is Tarmogoyf, 1 in a green creature Lurgoyf from Future Sight. It says Tarmogoyf's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. The card types are artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, sorcery, and tribal. Okay, and its power is like star and then 1 + star. Okay, so there are actually even cheaper versions of this card that I could highlight, but I also do think it's significant that the OG printing of this card has gone down a ton in price. I mean, dude, it used to be like 3 figures, like $200. For folks who, like me, sometimes want decks to have all the original printings of cards, this type of thing can be lovely news. I also believe this was a limited all-star that has now turned into a Commander all-star with the new-ish Goyf support from a year ago. Get those goifs while they're hot, kiddos. And while you do that, we are going to move on to our next card, which is Umezawa's Jite, which is a 2 colorless mana legendary artifact equipment from Betrayers of Kamigawa. It says, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put 2 charge counters on Umezawa's Jite. Remove a charge counter from Umezawa's Jite, choose one. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, or target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or you gain 2 life, and the equip cost is 2. Yes, this superstar of slicer CEDH decks everywhere has recently had a rundown, but more recently had a run up, so snag it while you can, kiddos. This thing is quite powerful when paired with anything that has double strike, and thusly, slicer decks run it over 50% of the time according to EDH Rec. There are tons of other applications for this, so if you are considering running it in some of your builds, there's no better time than now to snag it. All right, and just like that, we have made it to the end of this week's video. What cards are you stoked about coming down in price? What cards should I select next? Did I miss anything? I'm always down there in the comments, so come on down and have a chat with me. And hey, if you'd like to join the EDH Jank Center Discord community, watch these videos a day early, submit cards for the patron selection, and play spell table games with me and other patrons every month, consider signing up for the Patreon in the description below. We've got a beautiful Discord community and affordable entry points, so come on in and get janked. And hey, if you don't have the funds for monetary support, that's totally chill. You can just like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more Commander stuff and more jank. All right, guys, that's it for me. I'll see you on the next video.